A divorced businessman took his housekeeper to a business dinner, but her unexpected actions that night left everyone astonished. Alina had been working at Roman Blake's mansion for nearly 3 years, dedicating herself fully to her duties. Yet she never anticipated being summoned for such an unusual and surprising conversation. Roman, a renowned yet cold-hearted businessman, was facing a crisis in his company and desperately needed to impress influential investors at a dinner that very evening. Lacking the time and patience to find a suitable companion, his gaze fell on Alina, who was quietly polishing the shelves in his office. With an air of arrogance, he stated bluntly, "I need you to accompany me to an important dinner tonight. This is not an invitation, it's an order. Behave yourself. I require someone who is discreet and without an opinion." Though surprised, Alina maintained her composure. His demand felt more like a command, but she recognized an opportunity to prove herself. Accepting his order, she sensed the tension brewing and the possibility of something extraordinary awaiting her. She knew this would not be an ordinary evening. Alina arrived at the upscale restaurant on time, elegantly dressed. Roman stood at the entrance, visibly impatient. He barely glanced at her before muttering curtly, "Let's go," treating her more like an accessory than an actual companion. As they entered the sophisticated venue, Alina could feel the curious eyes of onlookers turning in their direction. The group of investors awaited them at a grand table in the center of the room. Roman introduced Alina with casual indifference, neglecting even to mention her last name. "This is Alina. She's accompanying me tonight," he said dismissively, before averting his gaze. The investors, all clad in tailored suits and wearing scrutinizing expressions, responded with polite yet guarded smiles. Some exchanged glances of curiosity, clearly puzzled by Alina's presence. It was obvious from their subtle looks of judgment that they did not perceive her as belonging in such elite company. Despite noticing every subtle reaction, Alina maintained her poise throughout the dinner. The conversation revolved around numbers, profits, and ambitious expansion plans. Alina remained quiet, absorbing every detail with keen observation. At one point, Mr. Jacob, a tall, authoritative investor, turned to her with a condescending smile and asked, "So, Alina, how does it feel to be at a business dinner like this?" His tone clearly anticipated a meek or superficial reply. Alina felt the tension tighten around the table. She could have easily given a trivial response, but she chose a different path. "It's quite fascinating to witness the dynamics firsthand," she replied confidently. "The financial details and projections are certainly compelling, but understanding the people behind the numbers is equally significant." The room fell silent, stunned by her unexpected insight. Alina's calm demeanor never wavered, while Roman stared at her in disbelief and irritation. She had just defied his instruction to remain voiceless and unnoticed. Mr. Jacob, visibly taken aback, chuckled briefly, his interest clearly piqued. "An intriguing perspective," he remarked, while the other investors began to regard Alina with a newfound curiosity. Roman's expression darkened, clearly displeased with the unexpected attention Alina was drawing. The evening was swiftly turning into the opposite of the discreet affair he had intended. Yet Alina appeared to be finding her voice in an environment where she had initially seemed out of place. Throughout the rest of the evening, Alina remained poised and composed. She could feel Roman's frustration as he pointedly avoided making eye contact, clearly agitated by her growing presence at the table. Conversely, Mr. Jacob seemed increasingly engaged, perhaps fascinated by her boldness in defying expectations. When the conversation shifted to corporate social responsibility, a topic that clearly unsettled Roman, Mr. Jacob seized the moment to ask, "Does Mr. Blake consider social projects in his company?" His provocative glance at Roman was unmistakable. Roman hesitated, visibly uncomfortable, struggling to give a satisfactory answer. Seizing the opportunity, Alina responded with calm confidence. "I believe social initiatives are a meaningful way for a company to give back to the community that supports its success. After all, businesses should stand for more than just profit. It would be a remarkable and forward-thinking step." Her statement left the investors visibly impressed. Alina's composure and eloquence had turned the evening into a memorable event, one that Roman had not anticipated, and one that would undoubtedly change the dynamics between them forever. Silence enveloped the table, and Alina could feel every gaze fixed on her. Yet, instead of recoiling, she held her head high, her expression unwavering. To her, this was about standing by her principles, Mr. Jacob, visibly impressed, smiled warmly. "Precisely my thoughts, Alina. It's refreshing to hear such perspective in a room like this," he remarked, deliberately challenging Roman. Roman's jaw tightened. He had brought Alina along to blend into the background, not to become the focal point. Irritated, he resolved to regain control of the situation. "Well, it's easy to have opinions when you've never faced the burdens of leadership, Alina," Roman interjected with a smug smirk. "Don't you think you're speaking beyond your understanding?" Alina's eyes locked onto Roman's, recognizing the challenge behind his words. But rather than shrinking back, she answered with measured confidence. "You're right. I may not know the weight of leadership, but I do understand its impact. Sometimes, those farthest from power see the consequences more clearly than those who wield it." Her words were bold, cutting through the tension like a knife. A surprised laugh escaped Mr. Jacob, clearly delighted by Alina's fearlessness. The other investors exchanged approving glances, clearly captivated by her composure and intellect. In mere minutes, Alina had transformed the energy of the evening. Roman sat in stunned silence, realizing he had lost command of the room. Though he struggled to maintain his composure, his frustration was unmistakable. To Roman, her defiance was nothing short of betrayal. When the dinner finally concluded, Roman wasted no time. He marched out without a backward glance, leaving Alina standing alone. Yet, Alina held her head high. She didn't need his escort. She knew her voice had been heard and her worth recognized. But she was unaware of just how deeply her actions had cut Roman, and that he wouldn't let the evening's events go without consequences. Back at the mansion, Roman's anger simmered. As soon as Alina walked through the door, he summoned her to his office, dispensing with all formalities. His eyes burned with indignation. "What were you thinking, Alina?" he demanded, his voice cold and unyielding. "I took you there to be invisible, not to steal the spotlight." Despite the tension, Alina remained calm, her posture dignified. She had anticipated this confrontation. "I merely answered a question, Mr. Blake. I did nothing more than share my perspective," she replied steadily, refusing to cower. "Perspective?" Roman's voice dripped with contempt. "You're my housekeeper, Alina. You're not paid to have opinions at a business dinner. You overstepped every boundary tonight." Alina's chest tightened at his words, but she stood firm, refusing to show vulnerability. Roman could not see beyond her role as a housekeeper. He couldn't fathom her ambition or her desire to be more than what he had reduced her to. "If my presence was so inconvenient, why did you take me there?" Alina questioned, her voice steady and clear. Roman's eyes narrowed, his voice icy. "You were there to do your job, nothing more. That includes knowing when to stay silent," he replied, his words calculated to wound. "Consider this your last day. You're fired." The finality of his declaration hung heavily in the air, but Alina stood her ground, refusing to let his words diminish her. She met his gaze one last time, her dignity intact. "Understood," she responded simply. Without another word, she turned and walked out of his office and out of his life. She left the mansion behind, carrying her integrity with her. That night had revealed her strength, her potential, and her courage. Although Roman's words were meant to punish, Alina knew they had liberated her instead. His rejection marked the end of one chapter, but the promising beginning of another. For the first time, Alina felt truly free. The next morning, as Alina was packing her last belongings, her phone rang unexpectedly. It was Mr. Jacob, the investor who had been captivated by her courage and insight at the dinner. He offered her a position on his team, a role she never could have dreamed of just a day before. With a blend of shock and newfound determination, Alina accepted without hesitation. The sting of Roman's harsh dismissal rapidly transformed into the most significant opportunity of her life. In the months that followed, Alina thrived under Mr. Jacob's mentorship. She uncovered talents and abilities she had never had the chance to explore while working under Roman's thumb. Her determination, strategic thinking, and leadership qualities quickly gained her respect and admiration within the company. Finally, Alina was in an environment where her voice was not only heard, but valued. "Let's play a little game," she mused to herself with a smile. "For those who actually read this far, type pizza in the comments. Only the real ones will get it." But now, back to the story. Meanwhile, Roman's empire was crumbling. The crisis that had loomed over his company was spiraling out of control. His short-sighted decisions, driven by arrogance and a fixation on short-term profits, were catching up with him. As a result, he lost crucial contracts and alienated valuable business partners. In a twist of fate, the company Alina now worked for acquired a controlling stake in Roman's business, positioning Alina in a strategic leadership role directly connected to his company's future. Their paths crossed once more at a high-stakes leadership meeting. Roman walked into the conference room with his usual air of authority, only to stop dead in his tracks at the sight of Alina seated confidently at the table. His face paled and his eyes widened in disbelief. It took him a moment to process the surreal image of his former housekeeper now sitting among the company's power players. Alina met his stunned gaze with unwavering confidence, her expression calm and resolute. There was no trace of resentment, only the quiet strength of a woman who had risen above the circumstances meant to hold her down. After the meeting, Roman cornered her, his face a mask of disbelief and indignation. "Alina," he began, his voice laced with frustration. "You're here? With them?" Alina stood her ground, meeting his glare with poised professionalism. "Yes, I am. Our company has acquired a significant share in yours. It seems we'll be working together after all." Roman's eyes narrowed, his ego grappling with the reality before him. "This is absurd. Do you really believe that just because you've landed yourself a position here, you understand leadership? You're out of your depth." Unfazed, Alina held her head high. "Roman, working for you taught me exactly what kind of leader not to be. It showed me how arrogance blinds people to their own flaws. And it taught me how important respect and integrity are in leading a team. I should thank you for the lesson." Roman's jaw clenched, his temper flaring. He stepped closer, his face mere inches from hers, attempting to intimidate her as he once did. But Alina didn't flinch. She had faced far greater challenges and emerged stronger every time. His voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Don't fool yourself into thinking this changes anything. You're still just a lucky housekeeper playing dress-up." Alina's gaze remained steady, her expression unshakable. "No, Roman. I'm someone who refused to stay in the place you tried to confine me to. I earned my place here, just like everyone else in that room. The difference is I did it without belittling others." Her words cut deeper than he expected, leaving him speechless. Roman was forced to confront a truth he had been avoiding. Alina was no longer the silent, obedient figure he could control. She was his equal, perhaps even his superior. Without another word, Alina turned and walked away, her back straight, her dignity intact. As she left him standing alone, Roman realized that she was no longer bound by his limitations. Alina had risen beyond his reach, and nothing he said could change that. What he didn't know was that Alina's journey was far from over, and she was only just beginning to wield the power she had rightfully earned. Alina stood her ground, her arms crossed as she met Roman's glare without flinching. Her voice was steady, each word carrying the weight of unshakable conviction. "That's the difference between us, Roman. I don't need your respect. I've earned my place, and it wasn't luck. You, on the other hand, are sinking because you never valued anything beyond yourself." Roman's mouth tightened, his rebuttal frozen on his lips. Her words cut through him, exposing truths he had spent years burying beneath his arrogance. For the first time, he felt a flicker of doubt, a crack in his unyielding facade, all triggered by the woman he once dismissed as insignificant. He forced himself to stand taller, to reclaim his authority. "I'll prove to you that I don't need anyone," he stated, his voice cold but faltering. "The company you're trying to take over is mine. It always has been, and it always will be." Alina's gaze never wavered, her calm demeanor an unspoken challenge. "Then prove it," she replied, her voice unwavering and resolute. "Show that you're still capable of leading and saving your empire. But remember, those who think they know everything fall the hardest and the fastest." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Roman alone, her words echoing in his mind like a haunting prophecy. He stood in the hallway, stunned and humiliated, the weight of her truth pressing down on him. For the first time, he faced the painful realization that his pride and selfishness had led him to the edge of ruin. Alina was no longer just an opponent, she had become the mirror he feared most, reflecting every flaw he tried to hide. Her words echoed relentlessly in his mind, unraveling his confidence. The man who once thought he had everything under control now stood on the brink of losing it all. That night, instead of burying himself in superficial strategies to save his crumbling empire, Roman found himself reflecting on every impulsive, ego-driven decision he had made. He recalled the loyal employees he had driven away, the business partners he had alienated, and even the family members he had neglected, all in pursuit of his ambition. For the first time, he felt the weight of his own pride, heavy and inescapable. A few days later, Roman and Alina were summoned to an urgent meeting with the investors. The room was thick with tension, the stakes higher than ever before. Roman entered, his posture rigid as he struggled to project confidence, though his weary eyes betrayed his fear. Alina was already there, poised and composed, meticulously reviewing documents. She didn't glance his way, but her presence was enough to shake his already fragile resolve. Once they were seated, the lead investor wasted no time. "Roman, the state of your company is dire. We need immediate and substantial change. Let me be clear. This is your last chance to convince the board that you're still capable of leading and saving this business." A cold sweat ran down Roman's spine, but he forced himself to maintain his composure. He launched into a speech about new strategies, profit maximization and cost-cutting, speaking with the same confidence that once commanded rooms. But this time, his words felt hollow, his vision shallow and short-sighted. The investors exchanged doubtful glances, clearly unimpressed. It was painfully obvious that Roman was recycling the same flawed ideas that had driven his company to the brink. Just as the mood in the room was sinking, Alina spoke up. Her voice was clear and confident, cutting through the tension like a blade. "The direction of this company needs to fundamentally change," she began, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "It's not enough to chase profits. We need to reconnect with people, with our customers, our employees, and the community. That means embracing social responsibility, fostering a positive workplace culture, and creating a brand that stands for more than just numbers on a spreadsheet." Her words hung in the air, resonating with a powerful truth that Roman's speech had lacked. The investors leaned in, visibly intrigued by her vision. The lead investor, his eyes gleaming with interest, gestured for her to continue. Alina spoke with the authority and insight of a true leader. She outlined strategic plans to integrate social initiatives, humanize the brand, and build a sustainable future, not just for the company, but for its employees and the communities it served. Her vision was bold, comprehensive, and deeply resonant, a stark contrast to Roman's profit-driven monologue. Roman sat in stunned silence, his mind reeling. Not only had Alina articulated the very strategy he had failed to see, but she had also captured the admiration of the investors he so desperately needed on his side. He looked around the table, seeing the nodding heads, the approving smiles, and the unmistakable respect they held for her. But the truth was brutal. She was saving his company, his legacy, but in doing so, she was also proving herself as the leader he could never be. Roman felt the walls closing in, his carefully constructed empire slipping through his fingers. He could no longer deny it. Alina had won their unspoken battle. She had risen from a place he once deemed insignificant to a position of power he could no longer challenge. For Roman, the hardest realization wasn't just that he was losing control, but that he was losing it to Alina, the woman he had underestimated the most. As the meeting concluded, the investors departed with a renewed sense of confidence in the strategic vision Alina had laid out. Roman lingered in the hallway, his posture rigid, his eyes clouded with confusion. When Alina noticed him standing there, she turned to face him, her expression calm and unyielding. "Why are you doing this?" Roman's voice was low, almost vulnerable. "Why would you help me save this company?" Alina's gaze softened, but her voice remained steady. "Because, unlike you, I believe in the value of people, Roman. And more than that, I believe in a better future for this company, with or without you." The impact of her words was profound, leaving Roman speechless. For the first time in his life, he felt something unfamiliar: regret. Her conviction shattered the defenses he had spent years building, and for a fleeting moment, he saw himself through her eyes. It was a humbling and painful revelation. Alina watched his expression shift, the walls crumbling behind his eyes, and without another word she turned and walked away. Roman stood motionless, the echo of her words reverberating in his mind. He couldn't escape them. Alina, the woman he had once overlooked and underestimated, had become his most powerful critic and his greatest source of inspiration. She was everything he wasn't: courageous, principled, and willing to put people before profit. But she was also the reminder of everything he had failed to be, and it infuriated him. The days that followed were a constant struggle. Roman found himself haunted by Alina's unwavering integrity. Her presence alone felt like a judgment on his failures, and yet he found himself wanting to prove he could change. But just as strongly, he felt the need to prove he was still relevant, that he still had something to offer beyond his crumbling ego. It was a battle he was fighting on two fronts, against Alina's expectations and against his own fears. The tension between them was palpable. Alina's composure, her relentless focus, and her perceptive insights unsettled Roman. She could see through his bravado, cutting through his pretense with the precision of her words. It frustrated him to no end. He had to find a way to regain control, not just of his company, but of his own identity. The opportunity presented itself sooner than he expected. An important meeting with the board of investors was scheduled for the end of the week. It was a pivotal moment. The company's future depended on the decisions made that day. Roman knew this was his chance to prove his worth, to demonstrate his leadership. He was determined to reclaim his authority, even if it meant challenging Alina head-on. On the morning of the meeting, Alina arrived early, meticulously preparing the presentation. She had crafted a detailed strategy, focusing on sustainable growth, prioritizing the company's mission over rapid expansion. Roman, however, had his own agenda. He had prepared a parallel speech, a bold vision for aggressive expansion that he believed would impress the board and reaffirm his leadership. As the meeting commenced, Alina confidently presented her plan. Her arguments were clear, well-researched, and focused on stabilizing growth without jeopardizing resources. The board listened intently, nodding in agreement, clearly aligned with her strategic approach. Roman felt the ground slipping beneath him, his influence diminishing with every approving glance cast in Alina's direction. He couldn't allow this to continue. He cleared his throat and spoke up, cutting into Alina's presentation. "I understand Alina's plan," he began, his voice firm and authoritative, "but I believe we need to be more aggressive. Expansion demands boldness. We need to show the market that we're entering a new phase." Alina's eyes narrowed, her expression unwavering. She saw through his intentions. Roman wasn't just proposing a strategy, he was fighting for his relevance. Keeping her tone measured, she responded, "Roman, we've tried aggressive expansion before, and it led us to this very crisis. Our focus needs to be on rebuilding the foundation, not risking everything for the sake of visibility." The board shifted uneasily, clearly divided, but Roman was undeterred. He continued, his voice rising in determination. "Alina, I respect your cautious approach, but a company that doesn't take risks is a company that slowly fades into obscurity. We need visibility, we need results, and we need them fast." Alina's expression remained composed, but her words were firm. "What we need is consistency, Roman. Our employees need stability, and our customers need trust. We are no longer in a position to gamble on ambition-driven whims. It's time to act like a company with a purpose, not a vanity project." The tension was electric, the board members shifting uncomfortably as they witnessed the clash of ideologies. Roman's face flushed with frustration. He was losing the battle, and the realization stung. Yet, despite his growing anger, he couldn't deny the truth in Alina's words. She spoke with a vision and purpose he couldn't match. The board president, Mr. Emmett, finally intervened, his gaze moving between them. "Both of you have made compelling arguments," he stated diplomatically. "But we need a unified direction. I want you two to collaborate and present a joint strategy at the next meeting." Alina nodded, her expression calm and professional, clearly unfazed. Roman, however, felt his heart sink. It was a public acknowledgement that his vision alone wasn't enough. He was no longer the sole leader of the company he had built. The truth hit him with the force of a tidal wave. He was losing control. And the person taking his place wasn't just an opponent, she was Alina, the very woman he had once deemed invisible. As the room emptied, Roman remained seated, his shoulders heavy with the weight of his fading power. He watched Alina gather her documents, her poise unbroken, her confidence undeniable. She didn't look his way as she walked out, but Roman knew she had won more than the board's approval. she had won his grudging respect. For the first time in his life, Roman was forced to confront the painful truth. Alina was no longer just a rival, she was his successor. That night, Roman stayed late at the office, surrounded by stacks of financial reports, projections, and strategic outlines. His mind buzzed with ideas, but each one crumbled under scrutiny. None seemed viable without endangering the project's stability. Frustration gnawed at him until his phone buzzed with a notification. It was from an old contact, a businessman willing to invest a substantial sum in the company in exchange for a minor say in the social projects. To Roman, it seemed like the perfect solution. The investment would provide the capital he desperately needed, while allowing him to prove that he could make bold decisions for the company without Alina's oversight or the board's approval. Fueled by a need to regain his authority, he scheduled a meeting with the investor the next day. The discussion was swift and productive. Roman pitched his vision of rapid growth, emphasizing the company's potential to dominate the market. The investor was intrigued, and within hours they had inked an initial contract. Roman felt a rush of triumph. Finally, he had something concrete to showcase his leadership. He convinced himself he was doing it for the company's survival, but deep down, he also wanted to prove to Alina that he could still lead. However, his victory was short-lived. As soon as Alina heard about the contract, she marched into his office, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. Roman was on a video call with the new investor, enthusiastically discussing expansion plans when he caught sight of her. A chill ran down his spine. He knew he was in for a confrontation he couldn't escape. As the call ended, Alina stood rigidly, arms crossed, her eyes blazing. "You made a deal without the board's approval. How could you possibly justify that?" Her voice was sharp, cutting through the room like glass. Roman braced himself. "Alina, it was an opportunity we couldn't afford to miss. We need this capital to expand and secure our future. I'm trying to save this company, just like you." Alina's expression hardened. "Save the company? Roman, do you even realize how risky this is? That investor now has influence over our social projects. What happens when his personal agenda starts shaping our mission?" Roman held his ground, trying to sound confident. "It's a calculated risk. He only wanted a small say in the decisions, nothing more." Her eyes narrowed, disbelief evident on her face. "And what about the commitment we made to transparency and valuing people over profit? This isn't the kind of leadership we promised to build. You went behind everyone's back, and now you've compromised our integrity." Her words hit him harder than he expected. Roman felt exposed, vulnerable, and more than anything, resentful of her constant judgment. He shot back, "Why do you always expect me to fail, Alina? I'm trying. I'm genuinely trying to do the right thing." Alina's posture softened, but her tone remained firm. "This isn't about wanting you to fail. It's about understanding the consequences of your actions. Leadership isn't just about bold decisions. It's about responsibility. Acting in secret only proves that you still don't get that." Her words echoed in the room, raw and unfiltered. Roman looked away, his defenses crumbling. Maybe I'll never understand leadership the way you do, Alina." She nodded slowly, her expression a mixture of disappointment and resignation. "Maybe not, but until you do, you'll keep breaking the promises you made to this company and its people. And that's a burden that will only get heavier." Her departure left the room cold and hollow, her words haunting Roman long after she was gone. For a moment, he felt the full weight of his choices and the devastating consequences they carried. 2 weeks later, the board convened to review the unauthorized contract. The atmosphere was tense, filled with skepticism and unease. As the meeting began, Alina took the lead, her voice calm but resolute. "This contract marks a significant departure from our guiding principles. We've allowed an external investor to influence our social projects, potentially steering them to serve his interests. I trust everyone here understands the risks this presents." Mr. Emmett, the board president, listened intently, his expression grave. He turned to Roman, his voice steely. "Roman, I expect an explanation. Why did you make this decision without consulting the board?" Roman swallowed hard, forcing himself to appear composed. "I saw an opportunity to secure the financial resources we needed. This investment could provide the stability to expand and sustain the project in the long term. I acted in what I believed was the company's best interest." Mr. Emmett's gaze was unrelenting. "But at what cost? This isn't just about finances. It's about integrity and maintaining our social purpose. You acted unilaterally, undermining the very principles we stand for." Roman's confidence wavered. He glanced at Alina, whose expression was unwavering, her disappointment palpable. It stung more than he cared to admit. He realized he hadn't just lost the board's trust, he had lost the respect of the one person whose approval he secretly sought. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, clearly disheartened by Roman's actions. The weight of his decision settled heavily on his shoulders. He felt the air grow colder, the gap between himself and Alina widening. Mr. Emmett broke the silence. "This is serious, Roman. We built this company on trust and transparency. Your actions have compromised that foundation." He turned to Alina. "We need a new proposal that safeguards our values. Alina, I'm trusting you to lead this initiative." Roman's heart sank. The final blow wasn't just losing control of the project. It was watching Alina step into the role he once commanded. She nodded with quiet confidence, her gaze never faltering. She was everything he wasn't: consistent, principled, and respected. As the meeting adjourned, Roman remained seated, his world unraveling around him. Alina walked past him, her shoulders straight, her purpose clear. She didn't look back, and Roman understood why. He had become a relic of the past, an obstacle to the future she was determined to build. The bitter truth was undeniable. Alina wasn't just his rival, she was his replacement, and he had no one to blame but himself. The board made a decisive move. They chose to reassess Roman's role within the company, seriously considering curtailing his authority over future decisions. The weight of that decision hung heavy as Roman left the conference room. His shoulders slumped, his confidence shattered. For the first time, he realized that changing wasn't just about strategy or power plays. It was about letting go of his ego. Alina hadn't just been challenging his actions, she had been trying to teach him a new way to lead. And at that moment, Roman understood that the leadership style he had relied on for years no longer had a place in this evolving company. After the disastrous meeting, Roman was on the brink of an emotional collapse. His carefully constructed world was crumbling, and the impact was devastating. He went home, but the mansion that once symbolized his success now felt hollow and cold, a stark reminder of his isolation. Everything he had built, his career, his reputation, his empire, seemed to be slipping away, and he knew the blame lay not with the board or with Alina, but with himself. His stubbornness, his impulsive decisions, and his selfish need for control had driven away his team, alienated the board, and severed his connection with Alina. He couldn't escape the painful truth. He was still acting with the same arrogance that had always defined him, and it had cost him everything. The next morning, Roman went to the office early, his heart heavy with regret. The emptiness he felt was suffocating, but he knew he needed to confront it. Avoiding Alina or the board wouldn't change anything. He had to face himself. Sitting alone in his office, surrounded by spreadsheets and strategic reports, Roman did something he had never done before. He reflected on his own decisions. He remembered Alina's words during the meeting. "You're still treating this company like a profit machine." At the time, he had dismissed her as naive, but now the words echoed with a truth he couldn't ignore. He had been so focused on numbers and profit margins that he had forgotten about the people behind them. He was beginning to realize that leadership was about more than control and authority. It was about responsibility, vision, and service. Roman stared at the empty office, realizing that perhaps he had never truly been a leader. He had been playing a role, performing the part of a cold, calculating businessman who believed that success was measured by financial gain alone. But now, facing the possible loss of his position and the trust of everyone around him, he saw how shallow that vision was. Leadership was about people, about inspiring and supporting them, not just using them as tools for profit. As the sun began to set, Roman heard footsteps at his door. He looked up and saw Alina standing there, her expression serious but not cold. For the first time, she seemed to see his vulnerability, the cracks in his armor. "Alina," Roman started hesitantly, his voice raw with emotion. "I know I've made countless mistakes. I know my decisions have hurt people more than I can ever fix. And I understand if you think it's too late to change that." Alina watched him, her eyes searching his face. Her arms were crossed, but her posture was less rigid, her guard slightly lowered. She could see his pain, his guilt, his desperation, but she was also waiting for something more. "It's a start, Roman," she finally replied, her voice steady but softer than he expected. "But recognizing your mistakes isn't enough. What are you going to do about it?" Roman felt a lump in his throat. He had been asking himself that same question all day, but he still didn't have a clear answer. I don't know, Alina. I just know I can't keep going on like this. The way I've been leading, it's wrong. It's broken." Alina nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. Real change isn't just about realizing you were wrong. It's about choosing a new path and committing to it every day. It's about learning to listen, to serve, and to put others before yourself. It's about building trust, not demanding loyalty. Can you do that, Roman? Roman swallowed, his chest tightening with anxiety. "I want to try, but I don't know if I can do it alone." His voice was vulnerable, the bravado gone, replaced by a fragile sincerity. Alina's face softened, her eyes reflecting a flicker of understanding. "You're not supposed to do it alone. That's the whole point of leadership. It's about building a team, not standing above one. If you're willing to learn and really listen this time, then maybe you can change." Roman felt a wave of relief wash over him, followed by a surge of gratitude he couldn't put into words. He had expected anger, rejection, maybe even pity, but Alina had given him hope, and he knew how rare that gift was. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Thank you, Alina, for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "I'm not doing this for you, Roman. I'm doing it for the company, for the people who believe in it. If you really want to change, prove it. Not just to me, but to them. Actions speak louder than words." Roman nodded, determination building in his chest. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He would have to confront his ego, earn back trust, and rebuild the relationships he had damaged, but he was willing to try, even if it meant starting from the ground up. As Alina turned to leave, she paused at the door. "There's a long way to go, Roman, but it's not impossible." He watched her walk away, a spark of hope igniting in his heart. For the first time, Roman felt he understood the kind of leader he wanted to become, and it was nothing like the man he had been. The journey wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, Roman was ready to change, and this time, he wouldn't do it alone. Anna's half-smile softened the tension, and for the first time, Roman saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen before. Hope. No one can do it alone, Roman. That's the point. True leadership is about partnership, about trusting others and understanding that strength comes from unity, not control. Her words sank deep, resonating in the silence that followed. Roman realized that his entire career had been built on the opposite belief. He had always seen leadership as solitary, as a burden he alone was meant to bear. Trusting others had always felt like a risk, a weakness. But now, as he stood amidst the ruins of his decisions, he began to see the truth. Trust wasn't his weakness, it was his missing piece. After a long pause, Alina spoke again, her voice steady but compassionate. "If you truly want to change, there is a way. But it won't be easy. You'll have to unlearn everything you thought you knew about leadership. You'll have to listen, to serve, and to rebuild from the ground up. Are you ready for that?" Roman looked at her, vulnerability raw in his gaze. For the first time, he wasn't just speaking from his head, but from his heart. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Show me how I can help." Alina's expression softened, a flicker of approval crossing her face. "Then let's begin." That same week, Alina took Roman to his first social project visit, part of the company's commitment to rebuilding its community connections. The project was focused on empowering women from vulnerable backgrounds to re-enter the workforce. It was a world completely foreign to Roman. There were no polished conference rooms or sleek presentations, just real people with real struggles. Roman found himself sitting among women whose lives were defined by resilience. There were single mothers fighting to make ends meet, survivors of abuse trying to rebuild their confidence, and young women determined to break free from generational poverty. As they spoke, sharing their stories with honesty and pain, Roman felt his worldview shift. This was not about profits or market shares. This was about people, about lives that were affected by every decision he made. At the end of the session, an elderly woman approached him, her silver hair tied back neatly, her eyes piercing with wisdom. "You're Roman Blake, aren't you?" she asked, her voice steady. "The owner of the company supporting this project now?" Roman hesitated, his throat tightening. Yes, that's me." The woman's gaze didn't soften. "My son worked for your company a few years back, gave his best years to you, and then, one day without warning, he was let go. No reason, no notice, just like that." Her eyes gleamed, not with anger but with deep-seated pain. "He lost everything. His job, his purpose. You destroyed him without even knowing his name." Roman felt his chest constrict, guilt clawing at him. He had no words, only shame. I didn't know. I'm sorry." The woman's gaze remained unyielding. "No, you didn't care to know. But now, you're here, listening. I hope that means you're changing, because people depend on you, even when you don't see them." Her words shattered the last remnants of Roman's pride. He stood there, exposed and vulnerable, realizing just how far his actions had rippled. It wasn't just business, it was personal, it was human. When they returned to the office, Roman found Alina waiting for him. He looked at her, his face pale, his shoulders heavy with remorse. "Thank you for taking me there," he said, his voice hoarse. "Today, I finally understood. It's about people. It's always been about people." Alina's eyes softened, her voice gentle but firm. "This is just the beginning, Roman. Change isn't a decision, it's a process, and if you're serious about it, you'll need to keep listening. You'll need to keep showing up." The very next week, Alina insisted that Roman attend a team meeting for the social project. It was a chance for him to hear the staff's concerns directly, a chance to listen instead of dictate. Roman entered the room to find wary eyes watching him, a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. His reputation had preceded him, and he knew regaining their trust would take time. Alina gave him an encouraging nod, signaling him to speak. Roman opened his mouth, but then stopped, realizing that his words didn't matter as much as theirs did. He sat down, his posture open, his face attentive. "I'm here to listen," he said simply. "I want to understand." The team exchanged surprised glances before beginning to speak. They shared their frustrations about limited resources, unrealistic expectations, and the pressure to produce quick results. A young woman named Clara spoke passionately about the need for consistent funding and emotional support for the women they served. "They're not just statistics, they're people who depend on us to survive. We can't afford to let them down." Roman listened, absorbing every word. For the first time, he saw the project not as an investment, but as a lifeline. These weren't numbers on a spreadsheet, they were human lives, and his decisions affected them in ways he had never considered. After the meeting, Alina approached him. "Well?" she asked, her eyes searching his face. Roman took a deep breath, his voice trembling with honesty. "We can't treat this like a PR campaign or a temporary project. These people rely on us. They need consistency. Commitment. I finally see that now." Alina's lips curved into a faint smile. "That's the first step." Determined to learn more, Roman threw himself into the work. He joined Alina on visits to the communities, observing the impact of the programs firsthand. He saw the hope in the women's eyes, the pride they felt as they gained new skills, the relief on their faces when they realized they weren't alone. And slowly, his heart began to change. During one visit, a young mother approached him, her child clinging to her side. "I heard you're the man who made this happen. I just wanted to say thank you. You've given us hope." Roman's eyes stung, emotion tightening his throat. "No, thank you. You've given me something much more important." The walls around his heart were breaking down, piece by piece. Roman was learning what Alina had always known, that leadership wasn't about power or control. It was about service, about uplifting others, about leaving behind more than just a legacy of profit. One evening, as they walked back from another community visit, Roman turned to Alina. "You were right," he admitted. "I thought leadership was about being in charge, but it's about being there for people. It's about helping others rise, even if it means stepping back yourself." Alina's smile was warm, the first genuine smile she had ever given him. "You're learning, Roman, and maybe, just maybe, you'll make a great leader someday." For the first time, Roman believed her, and for the first time, he believed in himself. During one visit, Roman met Eliza, a young mother whose life had been transformed by the training program. She spoke with raw emotion about how the project had given her the skills to secure a job, allowing her to support her young daughter. As she shared her story, Roman felt a lump in his throat. It hit him with full force. This wasn't just about numbers or metrics. It was about people, about lives that were changing because of decisions he had once made without a second thought. For the first time, Roman truly saw the impact of the work Alina had fought so hard to protect. It wasn't about quarterly growth or market share. It was about the individual transformations taking place within each person the project touched. And standing there, listening to Eliza's story, Roman realized just how blind he had been. Back at the office, he found Alina reviewing documents, her focus unwavering. Roman approached, his demeanor more serious and grounded than she'd ever seen before. "You were right, Alina," he said, his voice low but firm. "I treated this as a tool for expansion, a way to fix my image and regain my status. But today I realized how wrong I was. This is about people. It always has been." Alina looked up, her eyes searching his face, analyzing every word. She was silent for a moment before responding. "So, what are you going to do about it?" Roman took a deep breath, his resolve solidifying. "I want to learn. I want to do this the right way, not to get back on top, but to truly help people. I want to serve, to lead by example, and to give every person involved in these projects something I never had: true leadership." Alina's expression softened just slightly. For the first time, she saw sincerity in his eyes. "Then prove it," she challenged. "Not just with words, but with actions. Every decision, every conversation, show us you've changed. Show us that you're ready to lead the right way." Roman nodded, determination blazing within him. He was ready to rebuild not just his reputation, but his character. Over the following weeks, Roman threw himself into the projects with a newfound sense of purpose. He became a familiar face at community events, listening to participants' stories and learning about their struggles. He joined meetings with the project team, not as a leader giving orders, but as an equal, willing to listen, understand, and learn. He watched Alina in action, how she inspired people, how she made decisions with compassion and integrity. It was humbling to realize that true leadership came not from authority, but from service. Slowly but surely, his role began to shift. He was no longer just the boss, but a part of the team, someone who genuinely cared about the mission. Even the board members began to notice the subtle but significant changes in Roman's behavior. He was more open to feedback, more receptive to criticism, and less impulsive in his decisions. The arrogance that once defined him was fading, replaced by humility and reflection. Alina watched his progress with cautious optimism. She had seen him fall too many times to trust his transformation completely, but she couldn't deny that he was trying. And for the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, he was capable of change. By the end of the month, Roman felt a sense of peace he hadn't known before. He no longer saw the project as a stepping stone to personal success, but as a mission with the power to change lives. For the first time, he understood that true leadership wasn't about taking control, but about giving back. One evening, as Alina walked past his office, Roman stood up and approached her. "Thank you, Alina," he said, his voice genuine and steady, "for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." Alina's face softened into a faint smile. "Leadership is a long road, Roman. It's not about perfection, it's about growth. If you're willing to commit to it, I think you'll finally understand its true value." Her words resonated deeply within him. Roman realized that his journey had only just begun, but he was no longer afraid of the path ahead. Determined to continue his transformation, Roman immersed himself even deeper into the projects. He studied every detail, from financial reports to community needs assessments. He spent hours talking to the people whose lives were affected by the programs, listening to their stories, their hopes, and their fears. During one community visit, he ran into Eliza again. She was smiling, her daughter's hand tightly gripping hers. "Mr. Blake," she greeted him warmly, "I didn't expect to see you here again." Roman smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't known before. "I'm here to learn," he admitted, "and to make sure we're doing right by you all." Eliza's eyes softened. You've already done more than you realize. It's not just the job, it's the hope. You gave me a chance to believe in myself again." Her words humbled him. Roman realized that the impact of his decisions went far beyond profit margins. He was changing lives. And in doing so, his own life was changing as well. By the end of that month, the board convened to review the project's progress. Roman presented the updates himself, not with grand promises of expansion, but with genuine reports of impact. He spoke about the women whose lives were transformed, about the communities gaining hope, and about the real change happening on the ground. Alina watched him speak, noting the way his voice carried conviction and humility. There was no trace of the arrogance that once defined him. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of trust. When the meeting ended, Mr. Emmett, the board president, approached him. "I can see the difference, Roman. It looks like you've finally learned what it means to lead." Roman looked over at Alina, who nodded subtly, her eyes reflecting approval. He felt a swell of gratitude. It had taken losing everything to find what truly mattered, but he was finally becoming the leader he was meant to be. As they walked out together, Roman turned to Alina. "You showed me the way," he admitted. "You taught me that leadership is about service, about people." Alina looked at him, her face serene. "You taught yourself, Roman. I just showed you the door. You chose to walk through it." Roman smiled, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He finally understood the truth Alina had been trying to show him all along. Leadership wasn't about power, it was about purpose. And his purpose had just begun. The board members couldn't help but notice the transformation in Roman. What began as cautious skepticism gradually turned into genuine respect. Alina was one of the first to see the shift. At first, she observed him from a distance, wary of his intentions. But over time, Roman's consistent presence at the social projects, his earnest questions, and his growing willingness to listen proved that his commitment was genuine. As his dedication became more apparent, trust in his leadership grew, not just within the boardroom but also among the team and the project participants themselves. Initially, Roman attended the project meetings out of obligation. It was part of his rehabilitation, a duty to rebuild his image and regain trust. But soon, these visits became an essential part of his routine. He no longer saw them as formalities, but as opportunities to connect, to learn, and to serve. Roman began remembering the participants' names, learning their stories, and tracking their progress. For the first time, he was truly invested not in the numbers, but in the people behind them. Gone were the days of polished office meetings and exclusive networking events. Now, Roman found himself in community centers, surrounded by resilient individuals who were fighting for a second chance at life. And, surprisingly, he felt more fulfilled than he ever did in his luxurious boardroom. On one of these visits, he met Eveline, a middle-aged woman whose life had been shattered by a series of unfortunate events. She had lost her job, her confidence, and almost her hope. But the project had given her a new beginning. As she spoke, her voice trembled with gratitude. "It's more than a job for me, Mr. Roman," Eveline said, her eyes glistening with emotion. "It's a chance to start over, to feel worthy again. For the first time, I feel like someone believes in my potential." Roman felt a lump rise in his throat, his chest tightening with emotion. He realized that he wasn't just supporting a project, he was restoring dignity, rebuilding lives, and giving people hope. Every story he heard deepened his sense of responsibility. This was no longer about redeeming himself or fixing his image. It was about being worthy of the trust these people had placed in him. As the weeks went by, the project began yielding real, measurable results. Lives were changing, families were thriving, and the community was growing stronger. The company's reputation, once tarnished by controversy, began to heal. Board members who had once doubted Roman's sincerity now expressed their approval. They saw not just the success of the project, but the personal transformation in Roman himself. In board meetings, Roman was no longer the arrogant businessman who dominated the conversation. He spoke with humility, giving credit to the team and always highlighting Alina's crucial role. He presented data with a focus on impact, not profit, showing tangible proof that the project was making a difference. And the board members responded with enthusiasm. "Roman, I have to admit, I didn't expect this level of commitment from you," Mr. Emmett, the chairman of the board, said during one of the meetings. "This pilot project is not just successful, it's inspirational. If we continue with this approach, I'm confident we can expand it sustainably." Roman smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude. It wasn't just the acknowledgement from the board that moved him, but the realization that his leadership was finally making a meaningful impact. He knew that Alina had been his guiding light, the one who challenged him, inspired him, and showed him the true purpose of leadership, and in every meeting, he made sure to give her the credit she deserved. But what started as professional admiration was slowly growing into something deeper. As they spent more time working together, Roman began seeing Alina in a new light. She wasn't just a brilliant strategist or an inspiring leader. She was compassionate, fiercely dedicated, and unshakably honest. He saw it in the way she spoke to every participant with genuine kindness, how she remembered the smallest details about their lives, and how her eyes softened when they shared their struggle. Alina was more than a leader. She was a force of quiet strength and unwavering integrity, and Roman couldn't help but be drawn to her. During one of their community visits, Roman and Alina attended a special event organized by the project beneficiaries. It was a simple but heartfelt celebration, a way for the participants to express their gratitude to the team that had supported them through their journeys. Roman watched as Alina moved through the crowd, her warmth radiating in every interaction. She knew everyone's names, asked about their families, and listened intently to their stories. She laughed with them, shared in their joy, and encouraged them with genuine affection. There were no formalities, no barriers, just human connection. Watching her, Roman felt his heart tighten. Alina wasn't just respected, she was loved, and it was easy to see why. She gave herself fully to these people, pouring her heart into her work without expecting anything in return. She truly understands them, Roman thought, his admiration growing deeper. She sees them not as numbers or beneficiaries, but as people with stories and dreams. He realized then just how much he had to learn from Alina, not just about leadership, but about life, compassion, and purpose. She was teaching him how to be a better leader by showing him how to be a better human. As the evening went on, Roman found himself drawn to her, wanting to learn more, to understand the heart behind her strength. They stood together under the evening sky, watching the celebration unfold. For a moment, words weren't necessary. They shared a quiet understanding, a bond built through struggle, growth, and purpose. Roman turned to her, his voice soft. "I finally understand what you meant, Alina. Leadership isn't about commanding from above, it's about serving from within." Alina looked at him, her eyes reflecting warmth and pride. "You're learning, Roman. And maybe, just maybe, you're becoming the leader this company needs." For the first time, Roman felt the weight of his past lifting. Alina's trust meant more to him than any board's approval, and he was determined to live up to it. He realized that his journey wasn't just about redemption, it was about transformation. As they watched the people whose lives they had touched, Roman felt something he hadn't known before: hope, not just for the project or the company, but for himself and the man he was becoming. And standing beside Alina, he felt that he was finally on the right path. Alina didn't just lead the project, she became a part of it, intertwining her heart and soul with its mission. People felt that authenticity, and they gravitated toward her because she didn't just manage from above, she served alongside them. When the celebration ended, Roman offered to walk Alina back to the office. The evening air was cool, and the quiet streets seemed to echo the emotions swirling within him. As they walked side by side, Roman felt a growing curiosity, a desire to understand the woman who had changed his life so profoundly. Alina was an enigma, a force of nature, with a heart that seemed to carry the world's burdens with grace. He wanted to know what drove her, what inspired her to give so much of herself. "Alina," he began, his voice softer than usual, "I've always been amazed by your dedication to this project. You're not just leading it, you're living it. What made you get so deeply involved?" She looked at him, surprised by his question, but then her face softened, a warm smile spreading across her lips. "Roman, I suppose I've always felt this need to make a difference, to do something that mattered beyond just myself. When I was younger, I watched people I loved struggle, good people who just needed a chance, a helping hand. Seeing them suffer left a mark on me. Working on a project that gives others a chance to start over, it's my way of giving back, of making sure no one else has to go through that alone." Roman's heart tightened, her words touching him in a place he didn't know existed. He had never allowed himself to see the work from that perspective. For him, it had once been about reputation, legacy, and power. But for Alina, it was a calling, a mission to bring hope to those who needed it most. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, Roman processing everything she had said. It was then that he began to understand the depth of the woman beside him, and it only made him admire her more. In the following weeks, they worked even more closely together. What had once been a formal partnership grew into a genuine collaboration built on respect and shared purpose. They discussed strategies, debated ideas, and supported each other in every decision. Their conversations became easier, more fluid, and tinged with humor. And with each passing day, Roman felt himself drawn deeper into Alina's world. But something else began to grow within him, something he hadn't expected. Roman realized that he wasn't just admiring Alina, he was falling in love with her. The realization hit him with both fear and excitement. He, who had always guarded his heart behind walls of control and cynicism, was now captivated by a woman who saw the world with compassion and hope. He found himself thinking about her more often, noticing the little things, how her eyes sparkled when she was passionate about an idea, how she laughed easily with the team, and how she could stand firm with quiet strength. She inspired him to be better, to keep growing and to believe in something beyond himself. One evening, after a particularly long meeting, they stayed late at the office discussing the project's future. The conversation, which started professionally, soon drifted into more personal territory. Roman saw his chance and spoke from his heart. "Alina," he began, his voice sincere, "I owe you more than you know. These past few months, they've changed me. I used to think success was about control and power, but you showed me that it's about building something meaningful, something that lasts." Alina looked at him, her eyes reflecting a softness he hadn't seen before. "I'm glad to hear that, Roman. Watching you grow has been one of the most rewarding things I've experienced. You're not just leading this project, you're leading with purpose, and that's a beautiful thing to see." Their eyes met, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. There was a warmth, an unspoken connection that hung in the air between them. Roman's heart raced, and he felt an overwhelming urge to close the distance between them. But he hesitated, unsure if he was ready to risk their friendship and professional bond. From that night on, Roman's feelings only grew stronger. He found himself seeking out moments to be near Alina, drawn to her laughter, her intelligence, and her kindness. He began to notice every detail, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about the people they were helping, and the way her presence could fill a room with hope. She wasn't just his mentor or his colleague, she was the most extraordinary woman he had ever met, and she was changing his life every single day. One evening, after another late night at the office, they were poring over reports, their heads bent close together. Roman looked up, watching Alina as she focused intently on the documents. Her face was serene, her features illuminated by the dim office light. Without thinking, he blurted out, "You know, you're one of the most amazing people I've ever met." Alina looked up, surprised, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Oh, well, thank you, Roman. That means a lot." He cleared his throat, realizing how vulnerable he had just made himself. "I mean it. You make this place better. You make me better." For a brief moment, Alina's eyes softened, and Roman swore he saw a flicker of emotion there. Something more than friendship. But then she smiled, her professionalism slipping back into place. "Well, someone has to keep you in line," she teased, deflecting the tension with a playful laugh. Roman laughed too, but his heart was racing. He knew then that his feelings for Alina were real, and they weren't going away. He was falling for her hard, and he had no idea what to do about it. As the weeks went by, Roman struggled with his emotions. He wanted to tell her how he felt, but he was afraid of ruining what they had built. She was his partner, his mentor, and his friend, and, more than anything, he didn't want to jeopardize the work they were doing together. But every time he looked at her, every time she smiled or challenged him or inspired him, Roman felt his walls crumbling. She had changed him, shown him a new way to live, to lead, and to love. For the first time in his life, Roman was ready to give his heart to someone. He just didn't know how to tell her that she already had it. Alina's laughter was soft, warm, and genuine. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at Roman, her guard lowered for just a moment. "Thank you, Roman," she said, her voice gentle. "But I think you've changed too. You've become someone truly admirable." Her words struck Roman like lightning. In that moment, he realized he was hopelessly in love. But it wasn't just infatuation or a fleeting desire. It was deeper, more profound. He admired Alina's strength, her compassion, her unwavering dedication. He wanted to share her mission, to build something meaningful together, not just in business but in life. That night, as he walked home under the soft glow of the street lamps, Roman's heart felt full. Alina hadn't just changed his career, she had changed his heart. He knew that no matter what the future held, his life would never be the same. In the days that followed, Roman and Alina grew closer. Their professional partnership evolved into something more intimate, a friendship built on trust, respect, and a growing affection they both felt but were hesitant to voice. Roman, who had once been defined by ambition and power, now found himself vulnerable and authentic around Alina. She made him feel alive, more complete and more human. And Alina felt it too. As she spent more time with Roman, she couldn't deny the changes she saw. He was no longer the arrogant businessman she once resented. He had transformed into someone who led with humility, compassion, and purpose. His redemption wasn't an act, it was real, and it moved her in ways she hadn't expected. She admired his determination to rebuild himself and his legacy with integrity. And little by little, her heart began to open to him, even if she wasn't ready to admit it yet. Roman found subtle ways to grow closer to Alina. He invited her to lunch after meetings, proposed evening walks to clear their minds, and always found an excuse to talk about life beyond work. They shared stories from their childhoods, dreams they once had, and fears they were still learning to face. Their conversations flowed easily, effortlessly, and soon, the line between professional and personal began to blur. They were partners in more ways than one, collaborators, confidants, and, though unspoken, companions who found comfort and joy in each other's presence. One evening, after another long day on the project, they stayed late in the office to finish one last report. The room was dimly lit and the quiet stillness of the night created an atmosphere of warmth and intimacy. They sat side by side, so close that Roman could feel the faint brush of Alina's arm against his. He looked over at her, his heart pounding. Her face was illuminated by the soft glow of the computer screen, her expression thoughtful as she reviewed the document. Her hair fell loosely over her shoulder, and Roman found himself captivated by her grace, her strength, her beauty. He knew he couldn't keep his feelings hidden any longer. I just wanted to thank you," he began, his voice breaking the silence. Alina looked up, surprised by the emotion in his tone. "For everything, for showing me a better way to lead, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself." Alina's expression softened. "You don't have to thank me, Roman. The change came from you. I just pointed you in the right direction." He smiled, but his heart was beating so fast he could barely breathe. There was more he needed to say, something that had been weighing on his chest for days, maybe even weeks. He looked at her, his eyes searching hers, vulnerability plain on his face. "Alina," he began, his voice trembling with sincerity, "I can't hide this anymore. I'm in love with you." Alina's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. For a moment she looked at him in stunned silence, her lips parted in surprise. She hadn't expected this, though part of her had secretly hoped for it. Her heart raced as she tried to find the words, but nothing came. Roman continued, his voice growing steadier as he spoke. "I know this might be the worst timing, and I know I've made so many mistakes. But somewhere along the way, you became more than just my mentor or my colleague. You became everything. You showed me how to be better. You showed me how to care, how to love. And now I can't imagine my life without you." His confession hung in the air, raw and vulnerable, exposing his heart completely. Alina's eyes softened and she took a shaky breath. "Roman, She hesitated, her emotions swirling inside her. She had been so careful, so guarded, but his words shattered every wall she had built around her heart. She looked at him, seeing not the man he used to be, but the man he had become, the man she had grown to care for deeply. "I never expected this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You were always this untouchable figure, someone I respected, maybe even resented once, but you changed. You let yourself change. And I think I started falling for you before I even realized it." Roman's heart soared, his eyes lighting up with hope. "Alina?" She looked down, her cheeks flushed. "I didn't want to feel this way. I tried to push it aside, to stay professional, but it's been so hard. And seeing you grow, watching you become this incredible man, I couldn't help it." She looked up, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I couldn't help but fall for you too." Roman felt his chest tighten, joy flooding through him. He took her hand, his fingers trembling as they intertwined with hers. "Alina, you've given me so much. A purpose, a future, hope. And now, knowing you feel the same way, I feel like I can do anything. As long as you're by my side." She smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I'm not going anywhere, Roman. We've come this far together, and I want to see this through with you." He leaned closer, his face inches from hers, his voice a soft whisper. Can I kiss you?" Alina's smile widened and she nodded, her eyes fluttering shut. "Yes." Roman closed the distance between them, his lips meeting hers in a gentle, tender kiss. It was soft and sweet, filled with all the words they hadn't spoken, and all the emotions they could no longer deny. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the past, not the mistakes, not the fears of tomorrow. It was just them, two souls who had found each other through struggle and growth, through redemption and love. When they pulled apart, Alina rested her forehead against his, her breath warm against his skin. "This is just the beginning, Roman." He smiled, his heart full and his future brighter than it had ever been. "I know, and I wouldn't have it any other way." Together they stood hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Together. The words hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. Adrianella was silent for a moment, her eyes locked on his, reflecting a myriad of emotions. Roman's heart raced, fear creeping in that he had made a mistake, that he had misread her feelings. But then, she smiled. A soft, radiant smile that made his heart skip a beat. Her eyes sparkled, her face alight with warmth. "I'm in love with you too, Roman," she confessed, her voice tender and sincere. "I've felt this way for a while, but I was scared of how it might change everything we've built together." Relief flooded through Roman, his breath escaping in a laugh that was both joyful and emotional. "I was afraid too," he admitted, his eyes never leaving hers. "But I can't hide it anymore. I don't want to pretend that these feelings don't exist. I want to be with you, not just as partners at work, but as something more." Alina's smile widened, her eyes softening. "I want that too. We've been through so much, and I think we're finally ready for something more." Still sitting side by side, they leaned in closer, their faces mere inches apart. Roman's heart raced as Alina's lips met his in a gentle, tender kiss. It was soft and sweet, but filled with a depth of emotion that words could never capture. Time seemed to stand still, the world around them fading away. At that moment, there were no doubts, no fears, just the truth of their hearts laid bare. When they finally pulled apart, Roman looked into her eyes, his heart full. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close in an embrace that felt like coming home. They stayed that way, savoring the moment, their hearts beating in sync. It was a beginning, a promise of what was to come. After that night, their relationship blossomed naturally. Alina and Roman started spending more time together outside of work, exploring the city, sharing dinners, and going on walks. They discovered each other's quirks, shared stories from their pasts, and dreamed about the future. The more they learned about each other, the more they realized how perfectly they complemented one another. At work, they remained professional and focused, committed to the project and the people they were helping. They made it clear that their personal relationship would never compromise their dedication to the mission. But the team noticed the subtle changes. The way Roman's eyes would light up when Alina entered the room. The way she would smile just a little brighter when he was near. Their bond was undeniable, and their love seemed to fuel their passion for the work they were doing. The project continued to grow, thriving under their leadership. The community they served blossomed, participants found job opportunities, and lives were transformed. What had once been just an initiative was now a movement, a beacon of hope that reached beyond its initial scope. Word spread, and the project began to expand into other regions, touching more lives than they ever imagined. The company gained widespread recognition for its positive and sustainable impact. The board, once skeptical of Roman's transformation, now praised his leadership. Mr. Emmett, who had been Roman's harshest critic, acknowledged his growth in a board meeting. "Roman, you've proven that true change is possible. This project's success is a testament to your vision and commitment. You've become the leader this company needed, and I couldn't be prouder to say that." Roman accepted the praise with humility, his heart full of gratitude. He glanced at Alina, sitting next to him, her eyes shining with pride and affection. He knew that without her, none of this would have been possible. She had been his guide, his strength, and his inspiration. She had helped him become the man he was meant to be. Outside of work, Roman and Alina's relationship grew deeper. They shared countless moments of laughter, joy, and quiet intimacy. They learned each other's fears, dreams, and vulnerabilities, supporting one another through every challenge. Their love was built on trust, respect, and a shared mission that only strengthened their bond. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the city, Roman stopped suddenly, turning to face Alina. His eyes were serious, his expression tender. "You changed my life, Alina. You showed me how to be better, how to love. I don't ever want to live without you." Alina looked at him, her eyes softening. "Roman, you changed my life too. You showed me that people can grow, that they can change if they truly want to. You taught me to believe in second chances, and in love." Roman took her hands in his heart pounding. "I want to build a future with you, Alina, not just in work but in life. I want to spend every day by your side. Will you share that future with me?" Tears filled Alina's eyes, her heart overflowing with joy. "Yes, Roman, I want that. I want everything with you." They kissed under the city lights, their souls intertwined. They knew their journey was just beginning, but they were ready to face whatever came next. Together. Months later, standing before the community they had served and the team that had become their family, Roman and Alina made their relationship public, celebrating their love alongside the success of the project. The board congratulated them, their team cheered, and the community showered them with love and blessings. Their story wasn't just about redemption or leadership, it was about love, transformation, and purpose. Together they had built something that mattered, something that changed lives, including their own. And as they looked toward the future, hand in hand, they knew they had found not just success, but happiness, love, and a legacy that would live on in every life they touched. Roman and Alina had found each other in the most unexpected way, and their love became the heart of everything they built. Together, on a bright sunny afternoon, Roman and Alina walked hand in hand through the park, their laughter mingling with the sounds of children playing and leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. The sunlight danced through the branches, casting golden patterns on the ground as they strolled side by side. Roman stopped suddenly, turning to face Alina, his eyes filled with a deep, heartfelt emotion. He took both of her hands in his voice soft but steady. "I never thought I'd find someone like you, Alina. You changed my life, you changed me, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy." His eyes shone with sincerity, his love for her radiating in every word. Alina's eyes sparkled, tears of joy forming as she smiled up at him. "I want that too, Roman. You're not the same man I met. You've grown so much, become so much more. And I love you for who you've become, and for who we've become, together." Roman's face broke into a wide, joyful smile. He leaned in and kissed her, a gentle, tender kiss that held all the promises of their future. They stood there in the middle of the park, lost in each other, surrounded by the laughter of children and the whisper of the wind. It was the beginning of a new journey, a journey of love, partnership, and purpose. From that day on, Roman and Alina faced every challenge and triumph together. Their love only deepened, their bond growing stronger with every shared dream and every obstacle they overcame. Together, they continued to lead the project, watching it grow and flourish. The company became a beacon of social responsibility and ethical leadership, setting a new standard for impact and sustainability. Under their co-leadership, the initiative expanded into new communities, touching more lives than they ever imagined. They were known not just as successful leaders, but as an inspiring couple who led with compassion, integrity, and love. Their partnership became a testament to the power of shared purpose and genuine connection. They were living proof that love, ethics, and dedication could transform lives and build something truly meaningful. Their company received numerous awards and widespread media praise for its social impact and innovative leadership model. Yet, for Roman and Alina, the true legacy wasn't measured in accolades or financial success. It was in the lives they changed, the communities they empowered, and the dreams they helped realize. They watched families thrive, individuals rise above their struggles, and entire communities find hope and purpose. Those were the victories that mattered the most. The smiles of gratitude, the laughter of children who now had a brighter future, and the courage of people who were given a second chance. Months later, Roman and Alina stood hand in hand, surrounded by friends, family, colleagues, and community members whose lives they had touched. It was a small, intimate ceremony, filled with warmth and love. They exchanged vows under a canopy of blooming flowers, their eyes locked as they promised to love, support, and inspire each other for the rest of their lives. Their vows weren't just words of romantic love. They were pledges of partnership, of shared purpose, and of continuing the work that had brought them together. They promised to lead with their hearts, to build a legacy of hope and compassion, and to inspire others to believe in the power of change. When they kissed, the crowd erupted in joyful applause, tears flowing freely as they witnessed the union of two souls who had changed each other's lives and the lives of so many others. That night, as they danced under the stars, Roman held Alina close, his heart full. He looked up at the night sky, the stars shimmering above them, and realized just how much his life had changed. He was no longer the man who chased power and success at all costs. Alina had shown him the true meaning of purpose, of legacy, of love. He whispered in her ear, his voice tender and full of gratitude. "You gave me everything I didn't know I needed. You gave me purpose. You gave me love." Alina looked up at him, her eyes shining. "And you gave me hope, Roman. You showed me that people can change, that love can transform." He kissed her again, their hearts beating in perfect harmony. They swayed under the starlit sky, surrounded by friends and loved ones, their souls dancing together. They knew they were just beginning a new chapter. A chapter not just of their lives, but of a legacy that would continue to inspire and uplift for generations. Roman held her tight, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it together. They were partners in every sense, leaders, lovers, and dreamers. And with Alina by his side, Roman finally understood the true meaning of success. Together they had built something that mattered. Together they had changed the world, and together they would keep building a future filled with hope, love, and purpose. Under the stars, with the woman who had changed his life, Roman knew his journey was just beginning. And it was a journey he would walk hand in hand with Alina for the rest of their days. The legacy they were building wasn't just about the company, the project, or the impact. It was about love, about purpose, and about living a life that truly mattered. And together, they were ready to face whatever came next, forever united, forever in love. Do you think Alina made the right choice by forgiving Roman? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated with all our stories. And if you want more heartwarming tales, click here on the end screen to continue watching.